Chag Sameach. I have this memory from second or third grade. Now my family was living in France. As many of you know, I grew up in Israel, but my family moved to France, and it was supposed to be for just 1 year, moving from the city in Jerusalem to the countryside in France, this idyllic village in the Pyrenees. But it ended up being much longer. My parents fell in love with the area, the pace of life, the nature. And we lived in the foothills of the mountains, and especially of one mountain that was considered sacred to the local Catalans, both on the French side and the Spanish side. The mountain was in between the two. It was about biggest freestanding mountain in all the Pyrenees, about 10,000 feet high. And just recently I met a Catalonian family that moved to River Forest in our neighborhood. So I quickly approached the father, who was from Barcelona. I said, well, have you heard of this mountain, Canigui? He said, of course I've heard about it. It is a symbol of the Catalonian people, and every year the head of Catalonia climbs up the mountain. And anyhow, I remember being in second or third grade, and on the wall of our classroom was a beautiful, huge poster of this mountain with all of the different layers of life. At the top, the eagles, and then you're going down with the mountain goats and the wild boar and the insects and the vegetation. On top, the evergreens, and below the oak trees. And I remember them teaching about it. It's just the unity of all life, everything interconnected and interdependent in this eco system. And I remember thinking, of course, I saw it because I was living in the midst of it. And just outside my home, there was a forest. And at times, the wild boars would come down and dig up our garden. Once I remember walking by the river with a friend and seeing a dead wild boar, and just understanding it was going back into the earth, back into the whole system. And there was no question that it was all part of a cycle. In the fall, the leaves would fall and the chestnuts would appear, and then a short winter, and then in the spring and summer, the peaches and the cherries and the song of the nightingales. In the hot summers when the grasses would turn yellow, the whole of nature vibrating, just a sense of the joy and peacefulness of nature. So there's a passage in the story of Jacob in the Torah. Jacob, who has his dream, when he has his dream of the angels going up and down the ladder, as we will be reading soon as we begin the Torah again in the book of Genesis. And Jacob's fled from his brother Esau, who wants to kill him for stealing the blessing of the firstborn. And Jacob is used to dwelling in tents. He's not a man of the outdoors, but suddenly he has to leave his tent and flee, and he's all by himself in the desert. We can imagine he goes to sleep at night terrified, on his way to his uncle Laban and not knowing what his life will bring. And then he has this dream, the ladder, the angels going up and down, and God on top. And he wakes up and he says, wow, surely God was in this place, and I did not even know it. This is the gateway to heaven. And somehow that dream is really important. It gives him a little something to help him go forward through the 21 years ahead of exile. He has to work, and he's fooled by his uncle several times, 21 years of hard labor. And just before he leaves after that dream, he makes a pledge to God. He says, well, God, if you are with me, then I will keep you as my God, and I'll be devoted to you, the Holy Blessed One, always. And so what was it about that dream? Well, one of the interpretations is that the ladder and the angels, what they symbolize is the great interconnection of all of life. Right? He felt all alone, disconnected from his family. But in that spot, he realized even this little spot in the desert where there seemed to be nothing, there were angels going up and down ladders, and God was overwatching everything. And there was a sense of the ladder going from the ground all the way up to the heavens. Everything connected, the great interconnection of all life, divine life and earthly life, And he realized this very spot here, this seemingly random spot, is holy ground, is part of that web of life, the great expansiveness. And that I'm okay, he thought, because he felt strengthened by it, he felt joyful by it, he felt I'm part of all of this, I'm not just all alone. And that gave him joy and peace and something to hold on to for the years ahead. In our tradition, angels are divine messengers, but they're also connected to nature, right? We have the Talmudic saying that every blade of grass has a little angel that taps it and says, grow. And so when we're in nature, this is what we're feeling, some of that joy of Jacob, of interconnectedness, of everything above us and around us. It's one of the wonderful parts of nature, feeling that experience of connection and being part of something greater than just our little lives. It gives us that strength and special joy and sense of wonder and peace that comes from nature. And obviously as people, as human beings, we receive so much of our sustenance from nature, our medicines from nature, our cures to our ailments. A few years ago, Rachel and I were recommended a documentary by the Solomons, and it was about mushrooms, and it showed that the latest research shows how fungi underneath the ground is all connected through these huge webs spanning incredible distances, and some of them are just incredibly old organisms. And there was even, I do not recall the science behind it, a sense of somehow these fungi holding some intelligence, holding the memory of what's happening in that forest, a certain kind of group information made up of all the billions of light forms, but that the fungi somehow is connecting all of it. And this is part of what we're doing on Sukkot, on this holiday. We're taking a break from our modern and urban lives and our homes made out of cement and bricks, and trying to just spend a little bit of time that we're reminded that we're part of something much greater, a much greater system and cycle of life that goes far down into the ground below and stretches up to the heavens as we look up through the schach and see the stars, the large, immense spaces. It reminds us that we're part of it, and we should care for it and cherish it, and tend it as Adam and Eve are commanded. And one of my favorite comments about Sukkot is that whatever sukkah you're in, you breathe in the air of Jerusalem. And why the air of Jerusalem? Because the air of Jerusalem is the air of feeling open and the feeling connected and feeling the strength of the being in a holy place and of the land, and just being filled of strength and faith and joy. And this is what we're looking for, because once we breathe the air of Jerusalem, the air of the house of God, wherever it may be, of the gate to heaven, it is difficult to breathe any other air. Chag Sameach.